The 1960s. What a wonderful moment to live. The Andy Griffith Show, Bewitched, and of course, Gilligan's Island, everyone's particular favorite, are among the classics we have. Even though it was most likely the least credible of the group, it managed to win over a lot of people. It has a peculiar place in today's popular culture. Why? Despite its peculiarities, Gilligan's Island was a really good program. It transported viewers to a universe where boat repairs made sense, but coconut radios made sense with its humorous and ridiculous settings. Not at all. To be honest, that adds to the allure. It was made even more lovely by the idiots and bloopers. Today we're going to explore some of the most bizarre and hilarious errors the show has ever made, most of which you probably were unaware of. Let's begin. A brief history. Let's take a moment to reflect on how this incredibly bizarre program even got started before we put on some sunscreen and get caught up in the bloopers. The debut of Gilligan's Island took place on September 26, 1964, and concluded in 1967 after 3 seasons on CBS. Sherwood Schwartz, the man who gave us the Brady Bunch, was the creator of it. Sherwood claims that the broadcast was intended to be a covert social experiment of some sort. The idea was straightforward. Being stuck on a desert island forces a group of radically different people to work together. It sounds somewhat like Lord of the Flies, doesn't it? Fortunately, however, things never became that serious. Instead, things quickly became absurd somewhere in between the idea and the implementation. The idea, easy. 7 people are left stranded on a tropical island in the middle of nowhere after a 3-hour excursion on the SS Minnow goes sideways. Their amusing attempts to flee and their shockingly persistent failure to do so were the focus of every episode. Is it really the case that 7 mature individuals have no extra brain cells? In any case, the cast consisted of stereotypes that were immediately identifiable. Bob Denver portrays the foolish first mate, Gilligan. The skipper, a tough but endearing captain. The professor, with his inventions fueled by coconuts, is essentially the only rational thinker. Then there's the glitzy Hollywood actress Ginger. The lovely girl next door is Mary Ann. And the wealthy, out-of-touch couple, Thurston Howell III and his wife, Lovey, who managed to pack for a weekend getaway. Each character's strong adherence to their stereotype was one of the things that made the program successful. To be honest, that was somewhat the purpose. They were exaggerated for laughs by the writers, who utilized them as walking punchlines. And the formula was successful. The show was well received by viewers in spite of the first conflicting assessments from critics. The TV was enjoyable, but it wasn't really sophisticated. And this contributed to its widespread popularity. The concert was a quirky show for a good time, and it didn't strive to be more. As a result, it developed a devoted following. Reruns, spin-offs, cartoon adaptations, and even reunion films allowed the series to continue to exist even after it was cancelled. Before we get started, here is an interesting fact. Did you know that Mary Ann and the Professor were nearly left out of the now famous theme song? Yes, exactly. Earlier iterations just concluded with "and the remainder." However, the opening was re-recorded to incorporate their criticisms after a great deal of them. Additionally, did you know that the SS Minnow was named after Newton Minnow, the former chairman of the Federal Communications Commission, who famously referred to television as a huge wasteland? That is a subtle jab that we can support. Anyway, let's dive right into all the mayhem and information you were unaware of. Now that we've beached ourselves back in the 1960s, unconscious Mrs. Howell opens her eyes. To be honest, Gilligan's Island never aimed to be a flawless production. We might not have taken it seriously if it had been. Rather, it thrived on slapstick humor, stupidity, and occasionally total mayhem. Thus, we must begin with one of the most ridiculous errors. Lord Beasley, a quirky butterfly collector who is more concerned with his hobbies than saving the stranded crew, visits the island in the episode Man with a Net. He gives the castaways a fermented berry drink just before he departs. He is unaware, however, of its potent intoxicating effects. Additionally, the unaware castaways are unconscious after consuming it. But this is when things start to get a little interesting. If you pay close attention, you'll see that despite being intended to be unconscious like the others, Natalie Schafer's character, Mrs. Howell, unintentionally opens her eyes. You hardly see it since it's so fast, but if you're as perceptive as some of us, you might detect it. Although it's a humorous quirk that adds to the show's charm, Natalie probably thought the cameras had stopped rolling. The boat is always altering. This is for boat enthusiasts and continuity freaks. Have you ever observed the SS Minnow's apparent identity crisis? The Minnow abruptly leans to the left as it exits the harbor in the opening titles, seemingly hinting at the mayhem that lies ahead. It appears to be midway through a catastrophe film as it battles the surf, but then bang! In the closing credits, she sails like a champion because she is calm, balanced and upright. No sign of a lean. Was she off-screen given a chiropractic adjustment? The actual kicker is right here. It is obvious that the boat utilized in the shots in the calm harbor is different from the one that is thrashed around in the storm. They are entirely distinct in terms of size, form and structure. The storm boat appears larger and rougher, in contrast to the harbor Minnow, which is smaller, sleeker, and most likely just a standard charter boat. It seems to be designed for drama. What then transpired? During the storm, did they switch boats? Did the Minnow get more resilient before sinking, akin to a Pokemon? Or did the continuity man happen to be out for lunch that day? The most likely response is straightforward. Assuming no one would notice, they combined real photos of the leased Minnow with stock storm video. But here we are, 60 years later. The opening titles feature mysterious figures. The camera moves across the marina when the SS Minnow pulls away from the dock in the opening credits sequence. And you'll notice something strange if you stop at the correct time. In the backdrop are two unidentified men. The show never mentions them, and they are not among the 7 castaways. Although it's a brief and easily missed moment, continuity hawks and longtime viewers consider it to be one of the show's most enduring mysteries. The length of time this mistake went unnoticed is what makes it so intriguing. There was no method for viewers to pause or revisit scenes when the show first broadcast. This and other minor visual features were probably overlooked by viewers who were preoccupied with the humorous plot. But viewers can now pause, fast forward, and examine every frame thanks to the popularity of DVDs, streaming services, and high-definition remasters. Once lost in the haze of a moving shot, this brief period now serves as a quintessential illustration of how contemporary technology has transformed ordinary TV viewing into a frame-by-frame analysis. Gilligan's socks vanish in the middle of the episode. You may not initially notice this continuity mistake, but once you do, it's difficult to ignore. We are discussing Gilligan's socks, or perhaps more accurately, the mystery surrounding the socks' disappearance. Gilligan wears his trademark long socks in a number of episodes, especially during the stressful jungle chase sequences. This is where it becomes strange though. He seems like he's prepared for a leisurely walk while he's wearing those socks. The next minute, they vanish like a flash. When the camera shifts to a new perspective, Gilligan's legs are abruptly bare of socks. Now, throughout the series, this occurs several times. Although it's simple to dismiss it as a minor on-set incident, there may be a more pragmatic explanation. Imagine this. Bob Denver, being the trooper he was, chose to remove the socks for comfort in between takes, because it's likely really hot on set. To be honest, we could easily see that occurring. And it makes sense. The man spent hours filming in a tropical environment, and those socks, not very breathable. Here's the worst part though. The socks are back on in the following picture. Therefore it's not as if they're always off. In the midst of the action, the sockless photos tend to appear at random. In one moment, Gilligan is wearing his socks and racing through the jungle. He's sprinting barefoot the next second. Then, suddenly they're back. What a riddle that remains unsolved. Or rather, a mistake in continuity. Anyway, this disappearing sock performance became one of the more humorous and visible bloopers for fans who enjoy Gilligan's Island's oddball elements. It's the kind of stuff that makes the show even more charming. When we see the castaways struggle through various absurd scenarios, we can't help but laugh at their small flaws. How about the professor's straying coconut radio though? The coconut radio's enigma. To keep the castaways updated, The professor, who is renowned for his creative creations made from bamboo and coconuts, was able to construct a working radio, but throughout the series, this essential piece of equipment appears to have a mind of its own, because it moves around in one instant, it is securely sheltered from the weather within the bamboo hut, and in another, it is unexplainably discovered on the beach, where it is subject to the surf and sand. Sometimes it even shows up deep inside a cave. Serious doubts have been raised by this contradiction, such whether the radio sprouted legs, or maybe off-screen. The professor created a teleportation apparatus. We're joking. We are aware that manufacturing errors are probably the cause of these geographical changes. Nevertheless, it gives the program an inadvertent humorous element. However, does the humor continue when equipment used behind the scenes intrudes into the picture? Unintentionally, crew equipment shows up. Behind-the-scenes equipment frequently makes its way into a show's final cut. A coffee cup was actually left in the middle of a Game of Thrones feast. It's a fantasy world worth millions of dollars, taken down by a coffee run gone awry. Legendary. Gilligan's Island, too. Yes, it had a few of these manufacturing glitches before they were immortalized by memes on the internet. After watching a few episodes more closely, you'll begin to notice shadows that are obviously not cast away. Occasionally, a boom mic is used. At other occasions, the shape of a camera operator may be seen skulking slightly out of frame. You can't unsee them after you've seen them. Therefore, these aren't blink and miss it moments either. One of the most glaring mistakes occurs in a scene set in a jungle at night. Even though everything is meant to be enigmatic and gloomy, if you look past the palm leaves, you can see the bright silhouette of a studio light shining through. People, there is no moonlight here, just a huge flood lamp in the backlot, working extra hours. The fourth wall is suddenly breached. You are reminded that this was all filmed on a Hollywood studio as the illusion of a deserted island breaks down. There is a well-lit set in California, with a few potted plants and a creative camera position, but no tropical breeze or breaking waves. The trunk full of clothing and its secrets. Ever wonder why, for a 3-hour tour, Ginger has so many dresses? We're talking about more than just a few glitzy ensembles. She arrived with enough accessories to have a red carpet party on the beach, including sequins, feathers, high heels, gloves, and fur wraps. She seemed to be getting ready for the Oscars rather than a leisurely boat ride for sightseeing. But Ginger is just one piece of the mystery. Even Marianne, who is ostensibly on a brief vacation, has an incredibly varied wardrobe, adorable gowns. Despite rainstorms, forest excursions, and making bamboo furniture, everything manages to remain immaculate, including precisely ironed skirts, clean jeans, and knotted crop tops. Even the Howells are always changing their clothes. While Lovey appears to have brought her whole Palm Beach wardrobe, complete with matching hats, pearls, and silk gloves, Mr. Howells brought his trademark blazer collection and neckties. Even a parasol. Together with the Minnow, did they also rent a fashion truck? We just have one query. Who brings this much stuff on a 3-hour cruise? Or did they somehow realize that they would become stranded? Or maybe the professor used palm fronds and static electricity to create a portable dry cleaner. Fans have conjectured that the production team did not place a high premium on maintaining clothing continuity. Additionally, the majority of viewers at the time were unaware of it. Fans are not the only ones who find this odd. Even Marianne's actress Dawn Wells has made jokes about the clothing dilemma. However, when you view it now, it's one of those glaringly funny contradictions that enhances the appeal of the show. Island geography is changing. The island is known for its erratic layout, which makes it feel like a fever dream. The lagoon may show up on the left in one episode. It's on the right in another. The huts are occasionally tucked away in the middle of the jungle. On other days, they are conveniently close to the shore. The island itself seems to be in a perpetual state of change, akin to a tropical Bermuda Triangle. In any case, the show's production decisions are to blame for these disparities. Depending on the set changes and filming angle, the lagoon's appearance changed. It was built on the CBS Studio Center backlot in Los Angeles. Additionally, numerous images were taken in various real-life locales. On Kauai, Hawaii, along Moloa Beach, the pilot was filmed. Later seasons used Mokuolo Coconut Island, near Oahu, whereas the opening credits of the first season featured Sandy Cay near the Bahamas. The conflicting depiction of the island's geography was a result of these diverse filming locations. Lastly, the island's maps in the episode evolved over time. The island's layout varies in episodes such as Man with a Net and Forward March, where the canals curve in different directions. In Splashdown, important elements like mountains and clearings are absent from a space map, animals that have no place there. The island was meant to be a utopia cut off from civilization, unexplored and abandoned. However, the castaways repeatedly come across an odd assortment of creatures that most obviously do not belong on a secluded tropical island. The island appears to be home to a zoo's worth of fauna, from tarantulas darting over the sand to monkeys swinging through the trees. Furthermore, it doesn't end there. An alligator, which appears strangely at ease on the beach, confronts the castaways in one episode. The appearance of a lion is even more absurd. Even while it's entertaining to see, it begs the obvious question of these animals' origins. Was there a strange shipwreck from a zoo? Was there a secret refuge on the island with exotic animals? Or did no one ever mention the castaways' residence in a hidden wildlife reserve? Which explanation is more likely? Stock video. In reality, a large number of these creatures were recycled from other CBS programs. In order to save money on new material, the network regularly repurposed stock footage of animals from other productions, such as Lassie, The Brady Bunch, and other adventure-themed series. Consequently, rather of feeling like a desolate island, Gilligan's Island occasionally resembled a wild kingdom. To make matters even more ridiculous, the animals frequently appeared as though they were awaiting their signal. There is no indication of any wildlife one moment, and then a strange creature shows up, inexplicably blending into the environment. Since lions are not known to frequent tropical islands or any islands, for that matter, the lion episode is actually one of the most well-known instances of the show's contempt for plausibility. Members of the cast are acting out of character. When a performer deviates from their role, don't we all adore it? It merely serves as a reminder that there is a genuine person behind the stage persona. There are only a few spectacular scenes in the show where the actors nearly lose it, but it's very funny once you figure it out. For instance, during Bloopers, Bob, who plays Gilligan, was particularly prone to grinning or stealing a glance off camera. In one instance, when the skipper yells at him, you can see him stifling a laugh. Pay attention so you don't miss it because it's subtle. In relation to Bob, let's discuss a minor yet noteworthy point. Gilligan's nuptial band. During a scene in the humorous story about turtle racing on the island, they're often running, Gilligan raises his hand and reveals a gleaming gold wedding band on Bob's finger. The issue. Famously, Gilligan is unmarried. Although some admirers secretly adored him with Mary Ann, there was no reference to a sweetheart back home, no island romance subplot, and most definitely no wife-related backstory. How can we explain it then? The character did not in fact wear the ring. Because it was Bob's actual wedding band, the wardrobe crew didn't even bother to ask him to remove it. Or perhaps he declined. Throughout the series, Bob was known to wear it on set, based on cast interviews and trivia books, and it often escaped editors' notice. However, the camera lingers just long enough for fans to catch this episode, making it one of the most obvious mistakes. Were phones able to reach the islands? Yes, this did indeed occur. In a subsequent episode of the season, the castaways nearly used the professor's improvised transmitter to make a phone call to the mainland. Of course it doesn't work. However, it poses an important query. Why didn't they construct a radio tower years ago if they could call out? The technology was never consistent enough to keep fans screaming at their screens, but it was always convenient enough to make the plot plausible. And that's precisely how a lot of fans felt about Gilligan's hat swap in Season 3. There is a glaring continuity error in the episode Our Vines Have Tender Apes. Wearing the skipper's hat, Gilligan marches over a precipice. But a few moments later, his normal white hat is back on his head as he hangs from a limb. Did he use some of the mysterious island magic to accomplish this? The invisible pilot. Did you know that Marooned, the show's first pilot episode, was taped in November 1963 but wasn't broadcast until October 16, 1992? There were notable distinctions between this pilot and the final series. It is noteworthy that Kit Smythe and John Gabriel respectively played the roles of Ginger and the Professor. In addition, Marianne's personality was conspicuously lacking. Rather, Nancy McCarthy portrayed a character named Bunny. In contrast to later depictions of Marianne as a farm girl and Ginger as a Hollywood star, both Bunny and Ginger were portrayed as secretaries. A calypso-style song was used in the pilot instead of the famous theme song. Following their analysis of the pilot and recommendations for improvements to the cast and character relationships, CBS made these adjustments, resulting in some roles being recast and reimagined prior to the series' formal 1964 launch. Filming at a momentous occasion. The Gilligan's Island pilot's last day of production fell on a significant day in American history. President John F. Kennedy was assassinated on November 22, 1963. When the cast and crew learnt of the tragedy, they were in Honolulu Harbor, filming the last shots. The incident, as one might expect, gave the production a depressing tone. Nevertheless, the crew finished the required scenes in spite of the situation. Interestingly, there is a subliminal reference to the national tragedy in the pilot's opening sequence, which depicts the SS Minnow leaving the harbor with the American flag flying at half-staff, the true name of the skipper. On a lighter note, the character's full name is Jonas Grumby, however admirers frequently call him the skipper. When the castaways are presented in the first episode of Two on a Raft, this information is made public. Even though he is mentioned early on, the show mostly refers to him by his nickname, and later episodes hardly ever use his entire name. Alan Hale Jr. S character, the skipper, is the SS Minnow's stern but benevolent captain who frequently leads the crew's survival missions on the island. Occasionally references to his time in the Navy are made, which strengthens his position as the castaways' leader. Discussion on Gilligan's first name in relation to names. What is Gilligan's first name? For decades this question has sparked discussions. Gilligan is only referred to by his last name during the course of the series. However, did you know that Gilligan's initial name was supposed to be Willie, according to the series creator Sherwood? Bob even thought Gilligan was the character's first name, which is a detail that was never brought up in the episode. Fans continue to debate the character's full name because this disparity was never addressed in the series. However, we believe that this uncertainty lends Gilligan's past a sense of mystery that fits with the whimsical and light-hearted tone of the program. The conundrum of the coconut cup. To increase the show's authenticity, the first season's producers employed actual coconut shells as drinking cups. However, there were practical problems because of the coconut shell's inherent porosity. The cups would become soggy from absorbing liquids, which would make them unsuitable for frequent usage. Due to this issue, the production crew decided to use ceramic copies of the real coconut cups instead, which were durable and still had the required appearance. Therefore, all of the coconut cups that appear refreshing on the show are false. In any case, this modification enhanced the show's visual coherence and made filming scenes with drinking vessels more feasible. Issues with Louise's character Tina Louise, who played Ginger Grant, first voiced her displeasure with the path her character was going in, especially with reference to a rise in sarcastic speech that departed from the original idea of a dazzling movie star. Her worries prompted her to speak with the show's producers, who ultimately decided to replace the original director with Richard Donner. The way that Ginger was portrayed changed under Richard's guidance, becoming more in line with Louise's expectations. As the character relationships became more unified, the shift not only enhanced Louise's experience on set, but also helped the show succeed as a whole. The Globetrotters of Harlem. Come visit. The Harlem Globetrotters on Gilligan's Island, a made-for-TV film, was released in 1981, adding to the Gilligan's Island franchise. The well-known basketball team crashed on the island in this movie, joining the castaways in a conspiracy involving a crazy scientist and his robots. A thrilling basketball match versus the robots demonstrated the Globetrotters' athletic prowess, fusing comedy and sports in a novel way. The reunion of the old actors and the addition of a resort manager, who signified a change in the island's plot, made this film noteworthy. In keeping with the show's ongoing appeal, the movie also adds a unique chapter to the Gilligan's Island history, and its ability to tell stories creatively. This leads us to the largest mistake that you most likely were unaware of, the biggest of all the blunders. There are several ridiculous and inconsistent elements in Gilligan's Island, such as teleporting homes and socks that vanish. The blooper that is ingrained in the show's premise, however, may be the largest of all. They had dozens of chances to leave the island, but they never do. Let's take a step back. 7 castaways are left trapped on an unexplored desert island with no means of communication to the outside world, which is the whole hook of the show. The tension is there. We tune in for that purpose. Nevertheless, individuals and goods manage to make their way to this supposedly lost island week after week, episode after episode, without any problems. It's where cosmonauts unintentionally land. There, mad scientists construct covert labs. Pilots land in a crash. Filmmakers come by boat. Additionally, Santa Claus appears once. I'm serious. They can clearly hear radio broadcasts, newspaper articles, and even love notes. They have technology that works, and throw lavish parties. They even held a film festival at one point, and no rescue yet. The castaways receive a real bag of mail from the outside world, including letters from home, in the episode The Postman Cometh, which is one of the most well-known examples. A random postman discovers this secret island somehow. However, he simply delivers the mail and vanishes rather than offering assistance. Even the characters appear momentarily perplexed before brushing it aside and carrying on with their day because it's so ridiculous. In a different episode, a crazy scientist named the Friendly Physician travels to the island in his submarine, sedates and abducts the castaways, and then returns them for strange experiments. He has sophisticated communication technology, complete mobility, as well as a plan for leaving. Once more, nobody considers simply accompanying him. This has been noted by fans for years. The number of times the castaways could have flagged down a tourist or followed them off the island is a topic of light-hearted discussion on Reddit and fan sites. According to some hypotheses, the authors intentionally made fun of serialized logic. Others, like ourselves, just think the show was never intended to be taken seriously. Just a crazy live-acting cartoon. And that's true to a certain degree. However, there is typically some internal logic, even in ridiculous comedy. Nobody questions why dinosaurs are utilized as vacuum cleaners on the Flintstones. However, there are rules in the world. That reasoning breaks down with Gilligan's Island when we see that they were never truly isolated. The door stood open. Simply put, they didn't go through it. Why didn't they go, then? Well, in part due to the sitcom regulations of the 1960s. Network programming of the time were based on the reset button concept. Every episode had to revert to the same relationships, stakes, environment, and status quo. It made syndicating the show simple. Watch it again, or into the middle of the season. If the series had been saved, it would have had to be cancelled or at the very least remade from scratch. However, that doesn't lessen the humor of the main irony. There were escapeways, technology, and tourists all around these characters. The script was the only thing preventing them. In retrospect, the reason the show is so much fun to analyze is because of this enormous goof. It challenges you to see the flaws in its reasoning after inviting you to suspend disbelief. Additionally, it becomes more ridiculous the more you look. This is a great example of television that is so horrible that it's good. However, that adds to the allure for enthusiasts. Gilligan's Island is not a realistic film. You keep an eye out for the silly pratfalls and the coconut radios. Yes, the absurd plot gaps that somehow contributed to the show's enduring appeal. One conclusion may be drawn from all of these blunders. It was untidy on Gilligan's Island, but in the most endearing way imaginable. It didn't require flawless logic or seamless continuity. It tilted towards the mayhem. To be honest, that's part of the reason it's so enjoyable to go back. Which of these blunders were you already aware of? In the comments section below, let us know what we missed. Thank you for viewing.